Thanks to everyone for coming along. This is Trail Chat number 7. I'm joining you from Wadawurrung Country down at Winchelsea in, well, at the moment it's sunny Victoria, but I guarantee you with the weather we've been having, it will rain at some point during this. So I have an umbrella next to me. So I'll just be sitting here in the park with my umbrella. But I feel like it's very fitting to be out in wild places with Erchana Murray-Bartlett joining us today. And where are you at the moment, Erchana? You said you've just literally hot off the heels of today's marathon. What number are you up to today?
Yeah, so today is day 89. So it's absolutely mind-boggling to think that I'm still in Queensland.
You've still got a few states to go.
I do. I've got a few states. I'm on the very end of my Queensland journey. I ran from a place called Mount Cootha I finished essentially at the Story Bridge in Brisbane today. So that was a phenomenal 40 kilometres. I've come from a bit of a zigzag from the Cape, inland to the coast, inland to the coast. So I have been into Toowoomba over the weekend, and then rolling down to the Gold Coast, which is my family home, and then down south through Nightcap National Park, then I'll go towards the Blue Mountains, and then down through to Melbourne. So I'm well over halfway now.
That's epic. And it's, you certainly haven't taken the most direct route. Whenever I see your Strava maps, I'm like, she's running in a circle. What's she doing?
That is a question I get asked a lot.
You're meant to be going south.
Absolutely. So the way the bird flies from Cape to Melbourne's 3,800 kilometres, and I'm planning to do 6,200 kilometres. And there was 2 reasons for that. One being my original plan was to follow the now National Trail, and that's a 5,300 kilometre. I guess it's not really a rail trail. It's a looping connection of trails from Cooktown in Queensland to Hillsville, and then I was to finish it off to Melbourne. But it was quickly, when plans change on the fly, and with the setup that we had, and there wasn't enough vehicle access, and the way we wanted to organise a lot of the extracurricular stuff I'm doing, a lot of school visits, a lot of other things, it just made it a little bit hard. So we use it as a backbone, but we come and go from it. And because that number was sort of set up in our planning, the record that I'm trying to beat is the most consecutive marathons, and it's not fastest top to bottom. So I am going in circles sometimes to make up some extra distance. I'm always heading south. Every next day will be south. But it's a really good way to showcase a lot of Australia's beautiful national parks, trails, and just spend a little bit of time in each one rather than just running straight down the Bruce, which is something I definitely wanted to avoid.
Yeah, totally. It certainly. And I was wondering that when you did say, because the Centenary Trail also includes part of like the Australian Alpines walking track, which is, extremely remote and difficult to access. And when you are trying to just, stick to your 44K a day, it would be very hard to get access along there. And it takes you away from townships, and you had a good, bunch of people join you in Toowoomba yesterday, and, you really want to connect with schools and running clubs and people along the way. So it certainly makes sense to be able to take your time, and when you find somewhere nice, do a bit of a loop and actually have a chance to see it rather than just pass straight through it.
100%. And I think I'm such an ideas person. I had a million ideas when I started this, and I wanted to achieve everything. And now the more I go down, the cause is my ultimate goal here, is protecting national parks and native animals. And I thought I'm more effective and I can have more impact talking to towns than I can just going straight through those national parks. And absolutely, I'm running through a national park almost every day when I can, or every second or third day. But being able to talk to communities, local wilderness society groups, grassroots volunteer, that's where I'm getting, I think, the most amount of joy, as well as running. So I think I've finally found a good groove, and I still have obviously got the goal of breaking the consecutive marathon Guinness World Record, which is it'd be only 17 or 18 days away now.
That's so epic. And like you said, you're over halfway, but you will smash that record by a lot.
If I don't stop, and that's the plan. It's hard for me mentally to conceptualize breaking it and then not taking a rest day.
Totally. That was my next. I was wondering that, because at what point do you feel like the body kind of fell into the flow of of doing a marathon each morning? Because it is pretty amazing. I don't know, anyone who's been hiking or done multi-day things, you do get that sense of, I guess, the body starting to adjust after a few days. And but how long did it take you to kind of, or have you found that like that flow and that the body feeling good and used to your new normal?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's only runners that ever ask me that. Most people, so that's awesome. Yeah, I asked a lot of people for advice who have done similar events before, and every single one of them said to me, "Do not quit in the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks will by far be the hardest." And I was like, oh, of course I'm not going to quit in the first 2 weeks. I'm doing 22 weeks. I mean, imagine that. They were all 100% right. The body, pretty much, I had a calf injury, and then I had to change my running technique, which then caused a tibia injury, which then caused a quad injury, all in the first 2 weeks. And considering I started in the Cape, I didn't factor that into being so remote when I'd have such, I guess they were quite debilitating pains. So the first 2 weeks was pretty, because you're also adjusting mentally and physically to the 4.5 hours, or back then I was going a bit quicker, about 4 hours a day. And so, yeah, once that 2 weeks rolled around, my body definitely adapted. And now I would say I'm on a schedule of having 2 good days and then a bad day, 2 good days and then a bad day, where on that third day I've probably ran too fast the last 2, and then I just have to, and today was a slower day because I've had 2 good ones, and I was like, you just feel it. You feel it in every part. You get a headache from hitting the ground so much. You get sore hips, you get sore, but it's not niggles, so I know I can get through it.
It's just that fatigue, that constant fatigue. Because what is your, I guess, daily routine look like? You know, like, speak us through your new normal day.
My new normal days, they do change, and I'm very lucky for this. I'm trying to actually do a little bit less than I've been doing so far, now that I am feeling the accumulative fatigue a lot more. But yeah, I mean, I'm up, depending on the weather, between 4 and 5. If it's a cool day, I'll allow myself to sleep in, just so I can maximize recovery. But yeah, up straight away. I have a lot of food. I have a big bowl of oats and a big coffee, and then I hit the ground. I'll run wherever I'm running with whoever I plan to run with. Tomorrow I've invited anyone down to the Brisbane River, so hopefully we get a little bit of a group there. And then, yeah, I'll usually pull up around between 10 and 11:30, depending on the day. And then, yeah, it's been a mixture of afternoons of school visits, or sometimes they're we, like the other day we went to a wildlife shelter and had a really good chat with Trish, who was, you know, she had a koala rehabilitation centre. We're collecting a lot of footage on I guess the local extinctions in the area, and what that specific extinction threat is, and so it could be that. By 4 o'clock, I'm absolutely done. So I try not to do anything after
understandable.
4. But then on top of that, I guess, to say we have to set the camper up, and so we have to find a spot we can camp. And then, yeah, your usual things: washing, cooking, trying to unwind for the next day. And I will rarely stay awake later than about 9 p.m. If I'm up at 9, I'm not having a good time. I'm grumpy. So
yeah, I was gonna say, especially with an early start, that's a plus a marathon for good measure. Like, that's a solid day. I can see Dave like shaking his head, being like, how on earth? I think we all, that's a pretty epic day. And like, what's your like kind of body recovery like? Are you stretching? Do you have boots? Like, what works for you?
Yeah, at the top. So my original plan when I envisioned this was to try and stretch for as much as I could. This is the first time I've been inside in so long. And so the stretching faded when the mozzies came because it's really hard.
Oh, that would be the worst. Yeah.
So it's really hard to be in a pigeon pose, and your legs are just being, you're like, ah. So unfortunately, I'm not doing as much stretching as I would like. I've had 3 massages since I started, so that would be average out to about 1 a month. So I guess not as much as I would do when I was road racing and competitive racing. I definitely need to do more. But I think I'm sometimes prioritizing any moment that's free to just put my feet up and lie flat than anything else. I do actually just got given a pair of recovery boots. So TBC, you'll probably see them in the next couple of days now that I have power. To be honest, it's hard to use
that's
them
true. Yeah,
because
of
we're
course.
camping.
You're off grid. Yeah.
But
It'll be interesting
mostly
to
it's
see.
food.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I saw that. I couldn't believe how much food you ate on that day that you ate like Michael Phelps. Like that was just an obscene amount of food. What's your, you have oats in the morning. What's your, big lunch, big dinner, or what are your go-tos? Because as well, you are limited by what you can cook and what you can keep, in the camper as well. I guess now you're around towns and you've got more access, but what are your kind of go-to meals?
That now they're around town, it's a real luxury to have things that aren't cooked on a little gas top. So anything that's not a curry or a stir fry is my favorite right now. Last night I had some dips. That was luxury. No, I'm eating so much. I'm eating that 10,000 calorie a day. I was intimidated going into it, but it was actually surprisingly scary how much I could consume. I ran that marathon so full, and because it was all, I mean, Phelps, I guess the beauty of that challenge was he eats quite refined carbohydrates because he's competing, and it actually worked perfectly with what I was doing too. I would never do that in a day-to-day diet, but yeah, I'm surviving on 4 big meals a day, and then maybe 3 or 4 large kind of snacks around that. I'm dairy free, so coconut or vegan ice cream has been my savior. I've had on average 2 scoops a day since the top. I had 4 yesterday. So I'm surviving on ice cream and good food.
Oh, that's awesome. And what's your crew setup? Because we've seen a few, faces pop up on social media, but who's supporting you, and are they there the whole time? Because it's a huge, not commitment for you, but then for, the people driving the camper and, all that sort of thing. So what's your crew consist of?
It's a very low-key crew. It consists of myself and my partner, who, if you are following on socials, does everything on socials.
What a legend.
Yeah. I didn't know what a reel was. Like, I keep trying to, people say, hey, let's collaborate with me. I literally don't know how to accept a collaboration. So I'm learning a lot. He does all of that. He has a filmmaking background. So it's definitely a very good partnership there. He also, I always tell everyone he has the hardest job, because he has obviously, it's 22 weeks of his life too, but he sets up the camper every morning. He packs it down, he moves it, he drives, he then cooks, but he also deals with me when I'm emotional, which is 98% of the time at the moment. So he's here too. In the Cape, I actually had the pleasure of having my mum and dad do the first from the Cape to Cooktown. Mum wanted to, she's a bit of an adventurer as well, and she wanted to say she'd cycled it. So she got an
Nice
e-bike. Yeah, and she's 60, and she cycled the entire corrugated Cape, and it worked well for me because she could, and there was no supplies there, so we had to carry everything on our backs, and so she could manage to put them in the bike front. So we'd have 4 liters of water on between her back, my back, and the bike. Bars and gels and sunscreen and everything. So that was a really beautiful experience, because I moved out of home quite early and I hadn't really, and I'm 32, so reconnecting with mum in the middle of the Cape on a bike, challenged by dust and wind, and it was really beautiful. But they're gone now, so it's now a rotating support crew. I've got friends flying up from Melbourne for weeks at a time.
Awesome.
It's rotating, because I would never expect anyone to take 22 weeks, and they're all volunteers. No, I don't. It's a fundraising. There's no paid support.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What a great experience to have with your parents. And what did they, because they've obviously, probably been to a bunch of your, events and competitions over the years, but what did they think when you kind of had this idea to run from tip to toe, and for them to like see you struggling through those 2 weeks would have been quite a difficult experience for them and for you?
Yeah, they were funny because they just expected me to come up with something like this at one point. I think they were not surprised at all. They're like, Dad essentially just said, oh, I'll take my annual leave, I'll come with, so the car will break down, I'll help the car. So they were very supportive from the start. it was my grandparents were like, "You're quitting your job? What about your career?" They were very conservative of the idea, but it's been really heartwarming that since I've come so far, you can tell they've completely changed their tune. And now, Pa will call me and say, "Oh, I've contacted the ABC. He's getting on board and he's sharing the message himself." And he's like, "Oh, can you
That's
please email
awesome.
me the videos? Because I would love to, share them between my own colleagues and friends." So surprisingly, I didn't get as much pushback on the idea as I thought. And I don't know if that's a testament to who I was before this, or if it's just, I've got a good group of supportive friends and family. But yeah, it's mostly just been, how can we help you, not why are you doing this, which I think is very, very important.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome to have the family behind you, because it would be quite isolating. Like you'd spend that most of the time you'd be running on your own and it's just you and your partner. And yes, it'd be nice to have friends and different crew come up and kind of inject a bit more energy. And, because it would be, even though it's exciting, it's also pretty monotonous in terms of each day all the same, same kind of. And I guess you've seen a lot of landscapes. What have stood out of, I guess, the good ones in terms of places that have made you feel really positive and inspired versus the ones that, I guess, give you concern and make and reiterate the reason that you're doing this? Like, what are the, I guess, the highs and the light and the dark amongst it all?
Yeah, I guess the light, there's been many lights. I mean, the national parks that I've run through are relatively untouched and glorious, like Great Sand. I think it's called Great Sandy National Park, north of Noosa, and all through the Cape were pristine. And I guess running down the Telegraph track, it's 99% four-wheel drive enthusiast and just me, just running. So what I did like about that, because I was a bit skeptical how much damage would be done, but it was so clean. Everybody is very respectful, which I appreciated. Even the really popular places like Fruitbat Falls, they were all pristine. You look like no one had been there, and that gave me a lot of hope that people are, even though they're I guess, recreational activities might sound a bit damaging, they're not. They're very much respecting the environment around them. That gave me a lot of hope. The other thing that gave me a lot of hope, and it was beautiful, is a lot of the schools, the kids that I talk to, they're really, I guess, cognizant of the current issues that we're trying to talk about. They're very much aware that, the koala isn't around as much as it was when I was their age, and they really are. They're filled with optimism that they can change it and hope, and they're really passionate about just protecting wild places, which, to be honest, I didn't think they would even understand that it's an issue. And so that was really amazing. I didn't see a cassowary in the Cassowary Coast, and I was devastated. It's because they are a very endangered animal, and
Yeah,
that
that
was
would,
like,
yeah.
oh. I mean, you might not want to see one. I know they can be a little bit dangerous, but
Yeah,
I
they
didn't
look a
want
bit, they look pretty intimidating.
so that would have been nice to see. The Toowoomba Wilderness Society did take me around on the weekend, and unfortunately showed me a lot of areas that have been illegally felled, and or like construction sites that have been carried on without a spotter catcher. So they did point out a lot of the ugly that I think a normal citizen wouldn't see or be, I guess, aware of. And I think the more and more I see these things, it's so obvious how much it's happening. So I guess I'm seeing both sides of the coins here. But as an optimist, I really like to focus on all the good and the people that are trying to change things. I think that's the approach I want to take, is just reinforcing the good. And so I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah, it's been a mixed bag, definitely, I would say.
Yeah, well, I guess you are, like, it is good to be an optimist, I think, in this, especially, and seeing the good and meeting all these good people that might not be actively involved, but at least they're aware. And then once they are aware, they have, that there is hope, especially when it is the next generation who, I think are more kind of, aware of things than past generations. And even myself, like, it's great to see these things being taught in schools and having inspiring people like yourself coming along and speaking to them, and hopefully getting a few more trail runners out in the
Yeah,
younger
because
the younger audiences.
Yeah, because I'm a strong believer that, you know, running, well, having a respectful environment and what I'm doing is synonymous with trail running. I mean, isn't it just selfish in a way that I want to protect national parks because I love running through them, you know? And I guess a lot of trail runners would be in that same category as me. But I met some really selfless people too. I mean, the lady I met on Saturday, she's in 30 years, hasn't slept more than 2 hours because she gets up every 2 hours to feed the whatever animal. So there was echidnas, joeys, bats, two wedge-tailed eagles in her care, and you know everything else. And she just doesn't. She has no government funding. She has no funding. She just does it out of the goodness of her own heart. And you know, people like that put me to absolute shame. You know, I'm just like, wow, this is where the funding needs to be going as well. You know, these people need to have a bit more help. So yeah, I've seen definitely both sides of the spectrum, and it's been very eye-opening. And I guess now my goal is to channel this kind of learnings that I've got and make sure I'm putting my energy in what I can do in the right direction to make sure I'm impacting the most change.
Yeah, definitely. There's, I guess, using your voice and, you know, platform and to amplify the voices and the amazing work that others are doing, who are doing it in a very, selfless way, and, you know, not trying to get reward or notoriety or anything for it. They're just doing it because, you know, whether it's their love of animals or wild places, it's really and it is amazing when you do meet those people, and it certainly gives you a bit of, well, a big dose of hope for the future, knowing that these people are there. And sadly, it's often that there's stories that aren't told, you know, but they are out there doing that. And what other wildlife have you come across on your travels? Like, have you seen more or less than you expected? Because I guess you do, you know, spend a bit of time on roads, but what have you come across that's been notable?
I've seen more than expected because, as much as I'm on roads, 90% of the roads I'm on are back roads or farm roads or roads where I'm not sure if they're private land. Like, so I'm seeing, what have I seen? I saw in Bamagas, that was incredible. Off the coast, we were just walking along, and we're actually just, my partner and I were just making a video for some family back home. And in the background of the shot, because the ocean was behind us, but we were looking at the screen, we saw two huge fins go past. We turned and there was these two huge bull sharks, which I didn't even know.
Oh, wow.
I thought they might be territorial, but there was two of them, just kind of circling around us. I saw two again. Well, my mum and a baby giant groper in Bamaga too.
Oh, wow.
They were incredible. I've seen crocs galore. In the Cape as well. I was riding along down the main development road with mum, and we saw this wild bull. And we've seen heaps of cows, but this particular bull took a I guess bit of a hating towards us and actually started to charge. And the only reason it stopped running is because at the same time, thankfully, a car coming opposite way cut off its path.
Oh, wow.
And anyway,
oh, my goodness.
Oh, it was terrifying. But here's mum on the electric bike, puts it into turbo and nicks off into the distance, leaves me on the road on my own going, Mum. So we had a little word over that.
Yeah, that's great. You're like, good to see you, you know, you're really there to protect me in these times of need.
I think at the end of the day, she was not having a bar of it. So she refused to go back past this particular herd of cows. So in the end, we had to flag, because I can't get in the car because I don't want to risk my Garmin going to a 2-minute K pace, and the record going, absolutely, that's that's not okay. So I'm like, what do I do? So then we got the car to shepherd us slowly. So it went at 12K an hour next to us and stopped this bull from charging. That was interesting. I've seen a lot of snakes, a lot of death adders in and around Cairns, a lot more pythons down this way. I'm just trying to think. Oh yes, a lot of camels and emus when we went inland to the gem fields. And that would be the interesting stuff, I would say. Unfortunately, you see the cane toad issue in Queensland. There's not as many of those, bigger lizards that you would usually see, frill neck lizards. So that was something that you don't see down in Victoria. That's a bit saddening. Yeah.
And I guess because you are doing this to raise funds for the Wilderness Society, how is the fundraising side of things going? And I guess how, like, because I think you're over halfway. Are you over halfway in your goal?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just looking now. We've raised $37,273, which is
incredible,
amazing. The goal is 62,000.
62. Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And yeah, you're making great videos, I think, which are a great way to, I guess, keep people up to date and trying to get them on board on your journey. And how has, because you're trying to raise money for the Wilderness Society, and their, mission is to help fight the extinction crisis in Australia. And how is, I guess, your experience, I guess, has actually going out there changed how you feel about it, or like made it feel like it's more dire, or that there is once again hope? Like, how is that kind of, now that you've actually been out on the trails and, basically covered Queensland from top to bottom on foot, like you've really been out there and seen a lot more than a lot of people would see in their lifetime?
I think it's actually made me realize how dire it is, which is, definitely more dire. And also, I think I've learned, if I had $1 million, where I would divert the money. I've seen, I think it's made me realize how dire it is, to be honest, because there is not, everyone said, oh, you have to go to this. For example, I really want to see a palm cockatoo, and all the locals said, hey, absolutely, you'll see a palm cockatoo. You just have to drive 7 hours through this four-wheel drive track to get to this one national park where you probably will see one in this tiny little national park up here. I was like, oh, they used to be all over the Cape. You shouldn't have to drive an entire day to potentially see them in a national park. So, yeah, little things like that. And even because having Dad up in the very north, who grew up north as well, he saw a bit more of a contrast than I did, because this is my first trip up there, and he's 60 something, so he's got that like time frame to see the decline. But yeah, it's definitely made me realize we all need to do something. I know there's a million causes out there, so it's hard to constantly be trying to fundraise for every different thing. But if I can just at least be a voice and have people talking about the fact that once these animals are extinct, that's it. We can't bring them back. We're not Jurassic Park. Then maybe we'll be able to work together, or at least get people interested and active in this space. I mean, the koala is not just Australian significant, it's globally significant. It's up there with the panda and rhinos. And so it's about people knowing it's going on before we can do anything else.
Yeah, totally. It's just raising awareness. And I think also putting a face, an animal face behind the name, in terms of, we hear of animals that we don't necessarily know what they look like because they're not in children's books. We haven't necessarily grown up with them. And and then actually seeing it, what it looks like, and learning about it, we then, I guess, are able to do more to actually protect it. And and I guess that comes to habitat destruction as well, in terms of making sure we keep these places for those critters and birds and all of that to live. I'd love to see if there's any questions from people joining us. Feel free to either put your hand up or pop it in the chat. But yeah, I'm sure there's, I feel like we've covered a bit of running and a bit of the environmental cause that you're doing here, but I'm sure that there's a few runners on here who might have some more specific questions around how on earth you run 89 marathons back to back, and I don't know, wake up again and do it again the next day. But so you're heading into Brisbane, and then have you got an ETA for when you'll be in Sydney and then finally Melbourne? And what's planned for the finish line? Like, I'm based down in Victoria, so I guess I'm a bit biased as to want to get involved down there. But what's the second half of this adventure looking like?
Yeah, I don't have a Sydney date off the top of my head. I do have the 4th of December, because that is when we'll break the record. So that's Newcastle, and I've been
awesome, excellent,
chasing that date for a little while. So yeah, that will be in Newcastle. From there, I'm sure Sydney won't be too far beyond that, because it's just north. Christmas will be in Canberra. Because we're going to stay on the road for Christmas, which I'm sure my partner loves me for. But we'll only be 3 weeks away from, 3 weeks away from finishing then. So Canberra to Melbourne isn't a long distance, but we are going to go over the Victorian height, like the Alps, to get there in through Bright. So I'm really looking forward to that. Actually, I love that area. That ridgeline run from Hotham to Feathertop is one of my favourite runs of all time. So I really want to include that in. And then we should be landing back in Melbourne mid-January.
Awesome.
Yeah, it depends on essentially the days. If I do take a rest day later on, I don't think I will, but if so happens something, I'm not going to stop. I'm still going to get to Melbourne. So it'll be around the 12th of January at this point, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I envision it as there's a pier, you'll know because you're from Melbourne, on the end of Kerriford Road, that you pretty much go straight past Albert Park, and there's a little tiny pier and there's a little kiosk on it, and that's kind of where I want to touch the ocean.
Awesome.
So yeah,
sounds like it. Well, you'd have got a lot of time to think when you're doing your 44K a day, and I think if you're anything like me, most of that time's thinking about food and then food and probably the finish line.
You definitely remember what is a basic necessity when you're out on the road every day. You have such a joy for shelter and just to sit down and just any food. You're not stressing over what type of food it is, so long as it's sustenance and it's got some nutrition in it. Just having a tent over your head or a camper trailer and a shower.
What is your shower situation? I remember saying you've got like one on the camp trailer.
We have one on the camp trailer, but I try not to use it too much because we only have a certain litre capacity for water, and I try and save that for drinking, because each day I fill up the bottles from that tap, and it's okay when you're in suburbs, you can fill up. So if we're not camping, if we're camping remote, which we try and do as much as possible, it's often just a creek, or up north it was a waterfall, or if we're lucky, we've had amazing people who said, hey, you can come and shower at my place, because you get so disgusting after 4 hours or even more, 5 hours. And so up at the Cape in particular, everyone said to me, or the people I reached out to, they said, wear sunscreen thick and don't rub it in, and then what the dust does is it will stick to it and it will act as almost like a physical barrier to the sun. So I would finish those runs and I would be covered in just such thick dust, and then also the occasional bug and fly, and that was actually my sun protection. It was impossible to avoid it.
That's insane. But I was wanted to ask about the heat, because you said it's about 27 degrees, and I guess you're kind of chasing the summer down in terms of when by the time you get to Melbourne, it might be, who knows in Melbourne, but around 25 or so. And are you used, being from Victoria, you're probably not used to that kind of heat, and how has that played, into your, I guess, your day-to-day preparations and how you're recovering?
Yeah, I had to start in the Cape to come down, because the Cape has a wet season and it actually closes. It would have closed at the end of October. So I had a time limit to get off the Cape before it got too wet. I've had some astronomical heat. It was 38 degrees in Rockhampton, and I would be having a drink of water. Yeah, it was. I've had all the heat in the world, and I feel like now I'm so adapted to it 3 months in, that if it starts with a 2, if it's even to 29, I can run all day and it doesn't bother me. If it inches over to the 3s, I get a bit delirious. And I'm really mindful of the weather, and I make sure if it is hot, I will leave early, even if it's a 3:30 start. I'll do what I can, because it does rattle me, and it's compounding, because then I become dehydrated. I get a bit of a heat stroke, and then it's an extra thing for my body to need to recover to go again the next day. So sometimes it's unavoidable, particularly where the Cape, where it was humid and it was 24, it didn't matter what time you left, because it was 24 at 6 a.m. or it was 28 at 11 a.m. It didn't matter. And
how much water are you drinking each day? Like, because you'd have to, just to be, because you're living outdoors as well in the camper. Like, it's not like you're spending the afternoon in a air conditioned, room that is at a normal temperature.
Yeah, I guess I'm just dealing with it, to be honest with you. It's been just hot. I've just had a lot of sweaty days. It's another, I mean, to get this record, the girls that got it in the UK, they messaged me. They're like, why are you doing it like this through the heat and the dust and the remoteness? You could have stayed, because they stayed at home and did a marathon every day around their London, loop, and then they'd get physio, and then they'd go to the cinema. And here's me like, dust and cows and, dehydration and no food and no reception on. And I'm like, why did I do it like this? But no, I wanted to see Australia for Australia. And the heat is.
Now it looks like Erchana's joining us again. Here she is. She's back.
You know what happened after talking about the heat? I was on my phone because my laptop wasn't working, and it shut down from being too hot, overheating.
Oh wow, we thought it was probably charging, and we thought that was another good question for you. How are you charging everything when you're out in the wild?
Yeah, it's a good question. It usually is battery, but that time it was too hot, and so my laptop wasn't working, the phone wasn't working, so I had to quickly grab my partner's Mac, and then it's like Zoom needs to update, when everything decides to fall down around you. So I was like, help me. Charging is really tricky because we're obviously trying to film as much as possible. We have drones, we have, 3 laptops and all the film gear, my Garmin as well.
Yeah, the most important today. Yeah, the most important thing of all. So with random question, but I've heard that if you're doing stuff for marathons, you've got to do 2 watches. Is that a thing?
You don't need to, but you have to. You don't need to. I started doing that because I was super nervous that if my Garmin ran out of battery, which it got very low today because I forgot to charge it last night, that it doesn't count towards the record because you need to have the complete GPS, and they don't accept Strava even. They need a specific .kml file. So that's a really tricky one. At the very start, I would have a spare Garmin on and I didn't wear it on my wrist, but I just put it in Mum's bike or on my sport bike. But Mum sometimes would get bored, and then with like 38K, she'd just cycle home. She's like, oh, you've got it from here. So then the speed would go up to, again, like 2 minutes per K. And I was like, it's clearly not me running that speed, so it wouldn't work. It would work as GPS, but, without any cadence or heart rate, you can tell I'm not running it. I just rely on the one Garmin at the moment, which might be a bit risky, but we're 89 days in and it's been okay.
Yeah, I feel like you've got the rhythm, but yeah, that's super stressful that like you can do the thing, but once again, like technology lets you down, and just for some reason, if there's a glitch on the watch and you lose the days, like that'd be heartbreaking.
I think I would go out and go again. Like I want the record. So I think I would have to go out and then just spend the next 8 to 9 hours.
Just do a really slow plod, just cursing, sending angry emails to Garmin at the.
I think you need a backup. Can't you have your phone recording or something?
I think I should. Yeah, I really should. It's a bit silly.
You're so close, Erchana. Just don't let. Yeah, we're all like
on the edge.
That's
nervous, getting anxious for you. Now I'll go to Will, who had a question. Do you want to go for it, Will?
Thanks, Hill. Hey, Erchana.
Hello.
Amazing stuff, mate. Just incredible what you're doing.
Thank you.
I don't really understand how your body's not breaking down because I can't really fathom what you're doing. You kind of answered the question earlier when you talked about the first 2 weeks and the advice around not giving up. But how did you get through those first 2 weeks? Like you're obviously just running another marathon the day after running through an injury. How did you get through those first 2 weeks? Was it just that advice or what?
I got through because there was a few days where every step was excruciating. And particularly when my tib out went, I couldn't even flex extend my toes without, wincing. To get through that was definitely the hardest part I've had so far. It was horrible. I walked, I would run a K, I would walk 500 meters, I would run a K, I would walk 500 meters. And I guess I didn't give up then because I'd quit my job. I'd got all these sponsors on board. I'd got my entire family. My dad had taken his annual long service leave, which, he's waited 10 years for. My partner had quit his job. He'd spent all this money on film equipment. I thought, man, if I give up in the first 2 weeks, I'm going to be the least popular person on the planet. So I almost did it out of like, you must do it for everybody else. And that's the general truth, has been like, I'm too scared to quit. And then now I'm so close that I feel like that would drive me to the end. And I had backup. So I had an A plan, a B plan, and a C plan, and I still do. And my A plan is run it, and as you normally would. My B plan is break it into 10 kilometer kind of segments, and if you get to 10, and then if you need a walk, that's okay, and then if you get to the next 10, if you need a walk, and then plan C, which I've touch wood haven't got to yet, is you can speed walk it if you need. I haven't got there yet, which is mighty lucky, but that's there if I need to. So for the Guinness World Record, it just needs to be a continuous run. So it can't be 20 kilometers in the morning and 22 kilometers at night. It can't be broken into 3 times 14 kilometer runs or 13. It has to be, in one go. So stopping the Garmin is a bit of a no-no. So it has to be a walk or a run. And that's kind of how I get through it for Guinness. It's hard. Like I have days where I'm just in tears, but as much as possible, and I'm so glad that I only chose to do 42 a day. And that last 2 kilometers is just so I'm like, why is it 42? Why can't it just be 40? But that's kind of my mental attitude to it is I've put so much into it, and I've sacrificed so much, and I've got so much support behind me that at the end of the day, I feel like I remove myself from myself, and I do it for that.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting about the crew, and like it's something that it can't be about you. It's got to be about something bigger, because otherwise you would just give up if it was like, but when like you said, you've got all these people who are supporting you and have made such a big effort to be there as well. And I think that's where signing up, because I first got into trail running by doing Takanda Trail, and you're asking people to fundraise for you or to donate. And then that's a really good motivator to go and train, because you're like, it's not just about me, it's about all these people that have given me money, and now I feel indebted in a good way.
Yeah.
And it forces you to push yourself, and a good motivator to get out of bed and do that run, or go out in the rain, and generally when you get out there, it's we all know the hardest part about going out for a run is actually getting out the door, and once you're there, often most of the time you never regret it. But
that's
it's good
a really
having
good
that
point. And
that
a lot of
motivator.
people 100%. And a lot of people have reached out to me and offered to run, and even in Toowoomba, for example. And I get nervous leading into those group runs, because I do a lot of solo running where I've got my own freedom to stop and walk if I get a bit sore. And so I get nervous going into group runs, because I'm like, now I'm gonna have to up my game. I'm gonna have to run, at a certain pace the entire time. And I'm nervous. And then the second we start, it's great. They'll pull me through the thing, and it flies by, and you end up going sub 4 by well and truly, and you're like, oh, okay, that actually does have a big difference. But it doesn't take away the fact that you get nervous going into them, because you're like, so I think I need people around me to really get me up and up, and that's definitely my motivator for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Shane's got a question too. Go for it, Shane.
Thanks, Hillary. Astounding effort. Okay, congratulations, and hope you don't stop till you get down here. I've got 2 questions. First one is, was there some food or nutrition you were using at the start that you absolutely can't stand and hate now? And the second one is, what's your favourite piece of gear that you've been using that's lasted?
Good question. That's a really good point. I've got Cliff Bar as a sponsor, and I'm very grateful for that. And I've probably eaten more Cliff Bars than so I don't hate them now, but I've eaten a lot. I'm a bit over one specific pasta that we've had a fair few times, which is just it's not a lot of sustenance to it. It's just pasta and tomato, and it's been the one that we just took a lot of. But it's I'll probably love it again at the end. My favorite piece of gear, I don't know. I mean, my Garmin, because it's my gateway to the record. But I think I never was a hat wearer. ever. I've never worn a cap while I run, and I've got a cap that I'm religiously wearing now because it keeps the sun off me when I'm outdoors for longer than ever. It's a simple answer, but it's very effective. But I also have really long hair, and it gets so knotty that if I just put it in a hair tie, it actually physically sticks to me. So if I put it in a bun and then put the cap on it, I can save it from the knots. It's very female oriented issue, but yeah, just like not having my hair knotted to the absolute like dreads every day is a bit of a win for me.
That's so interesting, Erchana, because I've always seen you in hats, like you're always wearing one now, which makes sense because it's sunny, but like, yeah, you definitely strike me as a hat person. So it's interesting to know that you were never a hat person.
I almost didn't pack one. And then, and then I had a night where I almost cut all my hair off because my hair was absolutely knotted. And Rye goes, oh, just put it down and wear a hat over the top and it won't knot. I was like, firstly, how do you know that? And secondly, all right, I'll give it a try.
Give it a go. Oh, yeah. And whenever I see you, I'm like, you do have very long hair. And like, when it's not, I know Paige, who's part of our crew, she's the same in that she leaves it out, it just becomes like one big dreadlock. And then it's just an absolute pain to, try and undo that at the end of the day.
And the thing is, you can't cut it off because of the continuity of the film. I can't, if you can't cut it, you can't cut it because I need the shots if, we need to go back and forth. I was like, oh man.
Oh, the things you do for like content, hey? Mark's got a question as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing to see where you've been, Erchana, and just coming through the Sunshine Coast here. And yeah, fantastic effort. In 85 days is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I think I'm wondering what you're going to be like on day 106 when you've finished at 107. How will you keep motivated then?
That's a good question, and I'm trying to find that answer. I haven't found it yet because I actually am sometimes using just getting to the record as my motivation, and so definitely I definitely want to get to Melbourne, but how does it change? Do I still do the marathon every single day without a break? That's the question, and I'm definitely going to try. I think the fundraising then will turn to my focus. It's okay. Have we hit the goal? No. Okay. Let's hit the goal and maybe even blow that out of the park as well. So, I think I'll switch it over more to the cause once the record's done, and go from there. That's my answer now, but we'll see afterwards.
Great. And what do you do about shoes? Have you got pairs that you rotate between, or what do you do?
Yeah. Good question, because my shoe sponsor is actually incredible. So I'm sponsored by Tarkine. They're a Western Australian company. They make shoes from recycled products. So they're very sustainable, very aligned with our mission. They've just released a second iteration of the shoe I'm wearing, because at the start it was actually a little bit tricky because they're new, so they only have one shoe. And so rotating was hard if I wanted to stay in Tarkine. So to be honest, I would do, say, 3 days in Tarkines and then 1 day in a different shoe just until my body adapted to it, because I have a very low heel drop. So it's a very free run, which suits my style, but I never obviously put this much load through my body. And I would do 3 days in a low heel drop kind of flat, and then, which is the Tarkine, and then I would do a day in a soft kind of plush shoe. They've now released the second iteration, which is just as plush, so I can run in that nonstop. But sometimes I'll change. I have a few pairs, so I'll change every day. Sometimes halfway through the run, I'll change too. In fact, my foot has actually swollen an extra size now, which is not good. It means all my shoes don't fit me. So I've got to get some more. It's not a fun conversation, but thank you for all those shoes. Now none of them fit me. Can I please have that all again?
But I'll hang on to the old shoes, because hopefully, give it a bit of rest and relaxation, and your shoe size will go back to what it was.
Absolutely, exactly.
Yeah, that's hectic. That's hectic. Well, thanks so much, Mark. Good questions. And any other, we're going to wrap it up shortly, so that way you can get to your afternoon, Erchana. But any final questions from the group before we get going? I guess my final question is, how can we support you? Obviously donating to your GoFundMe and following along online, but I guess we're all mad keen trail runners, some would say. We know your pain, not to the extent that you're experiencing it, but just, a little slither of it. But yeah, what can we do over the coming weeks and months as you finish up and make your way to Melbourne?
Well, firstly, you definitely understand my pain. I did the Guzzler Trail Ultra before I started this, and it was 53 Ks, and I still stand behind the fact that it was the hardest thing I've ever done. So trail running is yeah, I'm very humbled by anyone that jumps on the trails for a full day. It's incredible. Yeah, come for a run. I'm passing through a lot of cities and towns and regional towns now. So yeah, I'm definitely leaning on a lot of local knowledge to get out into the trails because I am not always aware of them. So I've been taking on some great trail loops that have been astronomical. So yeah, just any kind of running knowledge you've got for me, definitely sharing the story and helping me kind of get the messaging out there is good, because you know, the more people that follow along and engage, the more, you know, donations that come through, but not just donations, the more conversations had, you know, oh, how can I help? How can I be, I guess, a slightly greener version of myself? How, you know, everything along those lines help. Yeah, totally. Just having the conversation, what can I do? And then that starts the next thing. And yeah, it's all a slow growing machine.
Yeah, that's the way to do it though, slow and steady. So what's the best way? Email or DMs? Like if people are both? Yeah.
Both.
Cool.
Yep. So I'm between me and my partner, we should catch it. If we don't catch it, it's just because we're busy. But yeah, email is the same, or DMs or Facebook. We're pretty much on that a lot, because yeah, we're trying to be very, I guess, receptive to people's advice, because it's actually been our lifesaver so far.
Yeah.
It's what we're doing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a great community out there. And I know there's a bunch of people tuning in who are on the Illawarra coast south of Sydney. So if you find your way down there, I'm sure there'll be plenty of, the Sea Cliff Coasters group down there are really keen trail runners and always, oh, yep, Dave's repping the tea. There'll be, plenty of people who want to come join you there, and definitely down in Melbourne as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, Erchana. You do not look like you've just run a marathon this morning, but
I haven't actually eaten yet. I've got
well,
have some food.
We need to let you go so you can have your one of your 4 big meals for the day. And it's nice to see you indoors, even though, you know, you spend all your time outdoors. It must be nice to get some I don't know, respite from the sun and the mozzies and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. But not for long. It's just it's night, and then we're back on the road.
No, well, I'm really enjoying, your partner's doing an excellent job at telling your story and showing off the beautiful parts of Australia that some of them I've been to, some of I haven't, but it makes me want to get up to Queensland, and especially those beaches and rainforests. It's just truly spectacular up there. And it's really awesome to, be able to wake up every day and think, Erchana's already run a marathon and I'm just going out to get my morning coffee.
Oh man, I can't wait to just go out for a morning coffee.
Oh yeah, I know. When I see you like running along with a coffee, I'm like, oh, that looks like, you know, just let the girl, you know, have a morning off.
I know, my poor stomach has had to endure a lifetime, 88 days or 89 days of constant run and eat. But no, thank you so much.
No,
it's been really wonderful chatting. And
yes, likewise. And we look forward to seeing you in person along the way, and all the best. Hope the body enjoy less than 20 days until you hit the milestone and the world record. So all the best for those.
Thank you so much. And I'll run with you soon.
Yes, sounds amazing. Thanks everyone for joining us, and have a fantastic week. And I'm sure we might not be doing our 44K, but at least we'll get out there for a little bit of travel time. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your week.
See ya.
See ya. Bye.